The sky burned red as Eric's ship tore through the atmosphere. Metal groaned around him. Lights blinked. Alarms screamed. He gripped the control panel tighter. The heat shields were failing. His mission was simple. Scout, map, return, but something had gone wrong. Very wrong. A shockwave hit. The ship spun sideways. He lost control. Trees rose fast below. Green, sharp, endless. Then everything went black. Eric woke with a sharp pain in his ribs. Smoke rose from the wreck. The cockpit was crushed. Panels sparked. One wing was torn clean off. His head throbbed. He checked his arm. No breaks. His leg was bleeding, but he could walk. He stepped outside. The jungle was thick. Tall trees reached. The sky, the air was heavy. It smelled sweet, but strange. Insects buzzed. Bright birds flew between the branches. Some had too many wings. Others had no eyes. He was alone. His communicator was dead. No signal, no satellite, no help. Eric grabbed his small pack. Water, scanner, first aid, not enough. He needed shelter. He needed to survive. He walked for hours. The ground was soft and wet. Vines clung to his legs. Twice, he heard something moving behind the trees. Big, slow, watching. When the sun set, the forest changed. The sounds grew louder. Echoes, howls, flashes of glowing eyes. He found a rock ledge and sat with his back against it. He held a sharp piece of metal, like a knife, just in case. Then he heard wings. Not the light flutter of birds. Heavy, powerful. A shadow passed overhead. He looked up. A shape circled above. Large wings. A humanoid form. It moved with grace, not like a beast, but not like a machine either. Before he could move, it dropped. She landed without a sound. She stood taller than him. Her body was strong, covered in smooth skin with a faint shimmer. Her arms were human, but her back held two large wings. Her eyes glowed gold in the dark. Her hair was long and wild. Feathers grew near her shoulders and ankles. She wore no armor, no weapons. Yet Eric felt frozen. The creature stared at him, head tilted, curious, not hostile, not afraid. He raised his hands. "I don't want trouble," he said slowly. She stepped closer, sniffed the air. Then, to his shock, she reached out and touched his chest, gently. Her fingers were warm, soft. She looked at his wound and made a low sound, concern, maybe even sadness. Eric whispered, "What are you?" She didn't answer. She couldn't, but she lifted him as if he weighed nothing. Before he could protest, her wings spread. She flew, up through the trees, past the thick branches, higher and higher. Eric held on tight, heart racing. They stopped near the top of the canopy. A massive nest rested between two trees. Not like a bird's nest. This was different. Woven from vines and silk, soft, round, and deep like a giant hammock. It swayed in the wind. She placed him inside. He was too stunned to speak. She curled beside him, wings wrapping around them both. Like a blanket. Her warmth calmed him. Her presence, strange as it was, felt safe. Eric looked at her. She met his gaze. No words, just silence and breath. Then, she began to hum. A soft sound, low and beautiful. Not human, not machine. It echoed like a lullaby from another world. Eric felt his eyes grow heavy. He whispered, "Why are you helping me?" She touched his cheek. Then she pointed at his chest. Her hand stayed there, over his heart. She did not move. He slept in the middle of the night. He woke to thunder. Storm clouds covered the stars. The wind howled. Rain began to fall, but the nest stayed firm. She was still beside him, still watching him. Eric whispered, "You're not going to eat me, are you?" She blinked slowly. Then, in a voice that was cracked and unsure, she spoke her first words. "You hurt." He sat up, surprised. You, speak. She shook her head, then pointed again at his chest. You, mine? Eric's breath caught. He didn't know what she meant. Not exactly, but he felt something shift inside him. The nest swayed gently. The storm raged around them, but inside the nest, it was warm, safe. Eric lay back. The Beastwoman rested her head near his. Her feathers brushed his skin. He closed his eyes. Somewhere far away, the stars still shone, but for now, this strange nest, this winged creature, her warmth, it felt like home. Morning light filtered through the leaves. It painted golden stripes across the giant nest. Birds chirped above. The storm had passed. Eric opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw feathers beside him. Warmth. Her. The Beastwoman was still there, curled beside him, eyes closed, breathing slow, peaceful. Eric didn't move. He didn't want to wake her. He just watched. Her wings were folded. Her skin caught the sunlight in a way that made it shimmer. She looked calm, not wild, not dangerous, just beautiful. A few minutes passed. Then her eyes opened, gold, sharp, and clear. She looked at him, not with confusion, not with fear, but with purpose. She reached forward and touched his arm, then pointed to the wound on his leg. Eric smiled weakly. Still hurts, but thanks to you, I'm alive. She tilted her head, as if trying to understand every word. She repeated one sound live. He nodded. Yes, I'm alive. She smiled. A small one, but real. Eric sat up, careful not to fall out of the massive nest. He looked around. It was high, maybe 50 feet above the jungle floor, supported by strong branches, built to hold weight. It swayed, but gently. How long did it take you to make this? He whispered. She didn't answer. Of course, she couldn't still. It amazed him. The nest was soft inside, lined with smooth leaves and strange silk. Not animal silk, something else, like alien cotton. She stood up and stretched her wings, then took a running leap off the edge. Eric gasped, but she soared. She flew between the trees with perfect control, wings wide. She vanished behind the branches. Eric sat back. His heart beat faster. She could fly. She could fight. But she had chosen to save him, to protect him. Why? Minutes later, she returned. She held something in her arms. Fruit, purple and glowing faintly. She offered one to him. Eric hesitated, then took it. It was soft and juicy, sweet, like mango, mixed with mint. Thank you, he said. She watched him eat. She didn't touch her own food until he was done. Later that day, Eric tried to climb down. He wanted to check the crash site. Maybe some equipment had survived. But as soon as he reached the edge of the nest, she blocked his path. Her face grew serious. No, she said firmly. Eric stepped back. I need to. She placed her hand on his chest, gently, then pulled him back inside. You stay. He stared at her, confused. You want me to stay here? In the nest? She nodded. Eric looked around. He couldn't believe it. This is your home. She pointed at herself. Then the nest. Mine. Then she pointed at him. You. Mine. Eric's breath caught. She wasn't just keeping him safe. She had claimed him. The day passed slowly. She sat beside him and traced shapes in the nest with her finger. He showed her how to say words. Tree, sky, hand, heart. She repeated after him, not perfectly, but with effort. Her name, she finally told him, was Kari. He said it softly. Kari. She smiled. It was the first time she had smiled like that. The bond between them began to grow. Eric still didn't understand everything. Where she came from, what she really was. But she had saved his life, fed him, protected him. She didn't ask for anything in return, except one thing, that he stayed at night. The jungle came alive again. Strange lights moved below. Screeches echoed in the distance, but the nest stayed quiet. Kari curled beside him again, her wings around them both. Eric whispered, "You're not like anything I've ever known." She didn't reply, but her eyes met his. He reached out, just a small touch, his hand on hers. She didn't pull away. That night, as he drifted to sleep, he realized something strange. He felt safe here, not just because of Kari's strength, but because of her heart. The jungle was wild. The sky was full of danger. But the nest felt like something else, a beginning. Days passed, maybe weeks. Eric had lost count. He stayed in the nest, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Kari kept him fed. She flew off in the mornings and always came back with food and strange plants. He began to trust her, and more than that, he began to feel something deeper. Sometimes she sat close without speaking. Sometimes she brushed his shoulder lightly with her feathers. She watched him with quiet focus, as if studying every blink, every breath. One evening, Eric leaned over the edge of the nest. The forest below was dark, too dark. Something had changed. The usual sounds were gone. No birds, no chirps, only silence. Then, a crack. A sharp noise like a branch snapping under heavy weight. Eric pulled back. He looked at Kari. She was already alert. Her wings tightened. Her eyes scanned the trees. She whispered one word: danger. That night, Eric couldn't sleep. He sat beside Kari, holding a small metal shard from the wreck. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was sharp, and he had learned to swing it like a blade. Kari sat still, eyes open, always watching. Suddenly, a distant roar shook the leaves, low, deep. Not like any animal Eric had heard before. Kari stood up, her body tense, wings slightly spread. "Eric," whispered, "what is that?" She pointed to the jungle below, then crossed both arms over her chest. "Bad, kill." His stomach turned. The next morning, Eric decided to explore. He had to know what was out there. Maybe part of his ship had survived. Maybe there was gear, a weapon, a signal beacon, anything. Kari didn't like the idea. She blocked the nest's edge again. But this time, Eric gently moved her hand. "I need to go," he said softly. "I'll be back." Kari looked into his eyes for a long time. Then she stepped aside. He climbed down slowly, gripping vines and branches. The ground felt strange under his boots, like it was breathing. He moved carefully through the trees, and then he saw it. Wreckage, burned metal, pieces of armor, but it wasn't from his ship. It was old, rusted, half covered in roots. A human helmet lay cracked on the forest floor. Beside it, bones. Eric froze. This wasn't just his crash site. Someone else had been here before. Another human. They hadn't made it. He knelt beside the helmet. A broken name tag still clung to the side. The letters were faded, but he could make out the last name, Marquez. He remembered that name. A missing pilot, declared dead 2 years ago. Eric's heart pounded. He looked around. The forest was silent again. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. He turned quickly, holding the metal shard tight. But it wasn't a beast. Not this time. It was Kari. She had followed him. Silently. Swiftly. Her eyes looked down at the bones, then back at Eric. Her wings lowered. She walked closer and touched his hand. She whispered, "Stay high." He nodded. He understood now. Whatever had killed Marquez, it was still here. They climbed back to the nest quickly. But even from up high, Eric felt the weight of the forest pressing in. Something was watching them. That night, he couldn't eat. He sat with Kari, both silent. Then he asked the question he'd been holding in for days. "Have you seen others like me?" Kari's face changed. Her wings twitched. She looked away. Eric pressed gently. "Did they hurt you?" She didn't answer, but her hands clenched. Then she whispered something in her own language, soft, full of pain. Eric didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. She had lost someone, maybe a human, maybe someone from her own kind. Either way, she carried sorrow behind those golden eyes. He touched her hand, slowly, carefully. "I'm not going to leave you." She looked at him, surprised. Then, something shifted in her gaze. Hope. But before either of them could speak, a sound echoed through the trees. A deep, growling howl. Kari stood quickly, her eyes wide. She pointed to the ground. "Come." Eric followed her to the edge of the nest. Below, shadows moved through the jungle. Not animals. Not like before. These were bigger, silent, hunting. Their bodies were low to the ground, skin dark and slick, long limbs, no visible eyes. Kari whispered, their name in her tongue. One word, sharp and full of fear. Eric whispered, "What are they?" She looked at him, hollow. He didn't know what that meant, but he understood one thing. They weren't safe anymore, and whatever lived below was coming closer. The jungle was quiet again, too quiet. Eric sat near the edge of the nest, gripping a sharp metal rod. His eyes stayed on the trees below, but he couldn't see them. Not yet. He could feel them, though. The hollow. They moved like ghosts. No footsteps, no voices, just shadows between branches, waiting. Kari crouched beside him. Her wings were pulled close. Her eyes never blinked. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. They were both thinking the same thing. It was time to fight, or die. Suddenly, Kari stood. She leaped off the nest and dropped straight into the jungle. Eric shouted, "Kari, wait!" But she was already gone. He stood there, frozen, heart racing. Then he heard it. Screams. Not from her. From something else. The trees shook. Birds scattered. Something slammed into a tree so hard it cracked in half. Eric looked down. He saw a blur of movement. Wings flashing, claws ripping. Kari was fighting. She was fast, brutal. She dove from the sky, struck, then vanished into the trees again. The hollow couldn't keep up, but there were too many of them. Eric climbed down fast. He nearly slipped twice, but didn't stop. He had to help her. When he reached the ground, he ran toward the sounds. His boots hit mud and roots. Vines scratched his arms, but he didn't care. He found Kari near a fallen tree. She was bleeding. One of the hollow had slashed her arm. Another was circling her. It moved low, like a shadow with teeth. Eric didn't think. He charged. He slammed his metal rod into the creature's back. It shrieked. A horrible sound, high and sharp. It turned on him. Its face had no eyes, just skin, stretched over bone, but it smelled him. It lunged. Kari tackled it midair. She pinned it down and drove her claws into its chest. It stopped moving. They both breathed hard. Eric knelt beside her. "You're hurt." Kari looked at her arm. Blood dripped slowly. She shook her head. "No, stop. More come." She was right. Roars filled the jungle. 10, maybe more. Eric grabbed her hand. Back to the nest. Now, they ran. Branches tore at them. Leaves fell around them like rain. The hollow gave chase. Fast. Hungry. Kari flew up first. She grabbed a vine and helped Eric climb faster. They reached the nest just as the first hollow hit the tree trunk below. It scratched and howled, trying to climb. Eric turned to Kari. "We have to fight from up here. They're not stopping." She nodded, then pointed to the edge of the nest. "Trap." Eric followed her finger. She had built something under the leaves. Sharp branches, bones, a drop pit. It was a nest but also a defense. Eric helped her fix the trap. They worked fast. Tied vines. Planted spikes. The hollow climbed higher. Eric threw a sharp rock. It hit one of them in the head. The creature fell, but another one took its place. Kari let out a call. A loud, echoing cry. It shook the branches suddenly. The hollow froze, just for a moment. Then they climbed faster. Eric grabbed his metal rod. One hollow reached the nest. It leaped in. Eric swung. The rod cracked into its jaw. Kari struck from the side. They pushed it back into the trap. It fell, impaled. Another followed, then two more. The fight was wild, fast, every second. Eric felt like he'd die, but he didn't, because Kari was beside him, always moving, always fighting. Blood soaked the leaves, but the nest held. When the last hollow fell, the forest went quiet again. Eric dropped to his knees. His arms shook. His chest heaved. Kari stood still. Blood on her skin, feathers broken, but her eyes still bright. He looked up at her. You saved me again. She knelt beside him, pressed her forehead to his. No, you saved. They sat there, in silence, high above the jungle, covered in blood and sweat, but alive. Eric reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. That night, they sat in the center of the nest, wrapped in each other's arms. No words, just breath. Just warmth, Eric whispered. I'm not just staying because I crashed. Kari looked at him. I'm staying because of you. She placed a hand over his heart. You, mine. Then she spoke the word he had taught her 2 days ago. Home. Eric closed his eyes. For the first time since the crash, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, belonging but far in the sky. A light blinked. A ship, not from Earth, not from this planet. Something was coming, and it wasn't a rescue. The light in the sky grew brighter each night. At first, Eric thought it was just a star. Then it moved. It blinked in a perfect pattern. Red, then white, then red again. It was not natural. It was a ship. Eric stood at the edge of the nest, staring upward. His heart was heavy. The ship didn't look human. It was too sleek, too silent. And it didn't come from orbit like his had. It slipped in from the edge of the atmosphere like a whisper. Kari stood behind him, her wings half open, her body tense. She could feel it too. Something was wrong. That evening, the forest went silent again. No birds, no buzzing insects. Only the sound of wind through leaves then. A sound like thunder, deep, mechanical. The ship landed far to the east, beyond the hills, but even from this distance, Eric could feel the pulse of its engines. Kari whispered, "Not your kind." Eric looked at her. "You've seen them before." She nodded. Her voice was low. "Hunt, steal, kill." His stomach turned. They weren't explorers. They were predators. Later that night, a soft humming sound came from the trees. Drones, small, black machines floated above the jungle. They scanned the ground with thin blue lights. One passed near the nest but didn't spot them. Kari held still. She didn't breathe. Eric copied her. They waited in silence until the drone moved on. When it was gone, Kari looked at him. "They take." He nodded slowly. "They're searching for something," she whispered. "Searching for me." Eric stepped back. "You." She didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a target. The next morning, they saw them. Figures in black armor, walking through the forest. Tall, armed, faces hidden behind smooth helmets. Not human, not hollow. Something else. Eric watched them through the leaves. They scanned trees. They talked in a strange, clicking language. One of them held a device. It beeped louder every time Kari moved. They were tracking her. Kari grabbed Eric's arm. "Run." He shook his head. "No, we stand together." She looked at him like he was insane. Then she smiled. They returned to the nest. Kari pulled out vines and old bone tools. She showed Eric how to trap the branches, how to hide heat signatures, how to blind the scanners. But they both knew it was only a matter of time. That night, a strange voice echoed through the jungle. It came from a drone. A message, broadcast loud and slow. "Inhabitant detected. You are valuable property. Return peacefully, or force will be used. Eric clenched his fists. They think she's property. Kari didn't speak. Eric looked at her. They're not taking you. The next morning, they attacked. 2 dropships flew low. Soldiers dropped down in black armor. They moved fast, surrounding the area. Drones scanned from above. Trees fell. Under the weight of machines. Kaar, I took Eric's hand. Fly. Eric hesitated. I can't fly, remember? She smirked. Then lifted him. They launched into the sky. The nest burned below them. Explosions cracked the branches. Fire climbed the trees. The soldiers shot into the air, but Kari twisted through the smoke with perfect control. 1 bullet grazed Eric's arm. He grunted, but held tight. They landed on a cliff beyond the ridge. Below them, the forest glowed red. The attackers searched the ruins of the nest. Kaar was breathing hard. Her feathers singed, but her grip on Eric never loosened. He looked down at the fire, then at her. You built that nest with care, and they just burned it. She looked at him. Build again. If we live. Eric stepped closer. We'll live. We'll fight. Then he said, the one thing he had never said out loud. I love you. Kari blinked slowly. Then she touched his face, pressed her forehead to his. You, mine. They held each other for a long time. The fire crackled below. Drones moved in the distance. The ship was still there, still waiting. But Eric wasn't afraid anymore, because now he had something to protect. Not just his life, but hers. Smoke still rose behind them. The nest was gone. Everything Kari had built, every vine, every feather, every soft piece of her life burned. She stood on the edge of the cliff, silent. Her wings hung low, her body still. But Eric saw the rage in her eyes, the heartbreak. He stepped beside her. He didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, he placed his hand over hers. We'll build again, he said quietly, but not if they're still here. Kari turned to him. Her voice was low, rough with pain. We fight. Eric nodded. That night, under the stars, they planned. Kaar. I showed him old ruins deep in the jungle. A forgotten temple, hidden by trees. She had lived there long ago, before she made her nest. Inside there were tunnels, stone walls, and high towers wrapped in vines. It was perfect. It would be their battlefield. Eric worked for hours. He used old tech from the crash. Wires, battery packs, broken lights. He created traps, simple but deadly. Explosives hidden in roots. Flash bombs made from ship flares. Tripwires. Kari flew over the jungle, watching enemy movements. She mapped patrols. She counted drones. They studied together, learned together, became stronger together. By the 3rd night, the enemy drew closer. The black-armored invaders began setting up machines. They brought scanners, blasters, shields. They weren't searching anymore. They were preparing for war. Eric stood on the temple steps. His clothes torn, his arm bandaged, his face smeared with ash. He looked up at the stars, then at Kari. We end it here. She walked to him, wings stretched wide behind her. Her feathers shimmered in the moonlight. She looked like a goddess from another world. You, with me. Eric smiled. Always. And then, they waited. At dawn, the first drone flew close. It scanned the ruins, then pulled back. An hour later, the attack began. Dropships hovered above. Soldiers rappelled down. Machines rolled in on 6 legs, scanning, beeping. They expected easy prey. They were wrong. The first trap exploded under their lead scout. Fire and metal rained down. 2 soldiers fell back, shouting commands in their strange language. Kaari. Launched from above, she struck fast, claws first. 1 soldier screamed, another fired, but missed. She was gone before they could aim again. Eric threw a flash bomb from behind the wall. The light blinded to drones. He rushed forward and slammed a pipe into one of them, smashing its lens. The temple became a maze. Eric led them into tight tunnels, dead ends, booby traps. He moved fast, ducked low, attacked when they least expected. Kari flew between high towers. She dropped rocks, swiped from above. Her wings cut through smoke like knives. They fought like one, and the enemies started to fall. But then, the commander arrived, a massive figure in red armor, taller than the others, stronger, smarter. He moved slowly, carefully, avoiding traps. He carried a long weapon that glowed with red light. He walked straight into the temple. Kari flew at him. He caught her mid-air and slammed her into the ground. Eric shouted, "Kari!" He ran toward them, heart racing. The commander raised his weapon, aimed it at her chest. Eric didn't think. He leaped forward and slammed his shoulder into the commander's back. The weapon fired, but the shot missed. The commander grabbed Eric by the neck and lifted him off the ground. Eric struggled, gasping for air. Then Kari rose behind him, blood on her face, fire in her eyes. She spread her wings wide, let out a wild, powerful scream, the kind that shook trees and echoed through the earth. Then she struck. Her claws ripped through the red armor. The commander dropped Eric, stumbled, back roared in pain. Eric rolled aside, grabbed the glowing weapon. He didn't know how it worked, so he hit the button and pointed. A beam of white light burst from it. It struck the commander in the chest. His armor melted. He collapsed to his knees. KAA. I moved in. One final strike. Silence. The jungle stilled. The invaders were gone. Those who survived fled into the trees. Their ship lifted off, engines whining. They left without their prize. Kari fell to her knees beside Eric. He lay on the stone floor, breathing hard. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded slowly. "You fight like Skyfire." He laughed, weakly. "Thanks. You're not bad yourself." She leaned down, touched her forehead to his. "We win." Eric looked around. The temple was cracked, burned, but it was still standing. He smiled. "This place, it can be our new nest." She looked up at the broken walls, then back at him. "Yes, ours." And for the first time in days, they held each other without fear. The war was over, but their story wasn't. Days passed. The jungle was calm again. The wind no longer carried the sound of machines. No more drones buzzed in the sky. No more soldiers in black armor walked between the trees. The war was over, but the world had changed. Eric stood on the highest point of the ancient temple. His clothes were torn, his skin marked with scars, but his eyes were full of light. Kari stood beside him, wings folded, feathers cleaned, her face no longer tense with fear. They had survived together. Below them, vines grew thick around the temple walls. The traps were still there, but now they were hidden, quiet, sleeping. Just like the forest, Eric watched the horizon. "I used to think Earth was everything," he said softly. "Civilization, technology, safety." He looked at Kari. "But none of that saved me." "You did." Kari didn't speak. She just took his hand and squeezed it gently. They had rebuilt part of the temple, not to fight, to live. Eric had cleared a space where sunlight poured in. Kari had lined the stone floor with soft vines and feathers. It was nothing like her old nest, but it was theirs. One evening, while Eric was fixing a solar lamp, the sky flashed again. Not fire, not a drone, a rescue beacon. He stared at it for a long time. His old emergency signal had finally reached orbit. Someone had answered. A message came through on his wrist console. The screen blinked. "Survivor located. Human recovery team en route." Eric sat still for a while. Then he showed it to Kari. She looked at the screen, then at his face. "You go." He looked at her, eyes wide. "You think I would leave you?" She didn't answer, but he saw the fear in her eyes. "I'm not leaving. he said. Not now, not ever. Later that night, the human ship appeared. It hovered in the sky, loud and bright. It lowered a scanner beam over the forest. A voice called out, "This is Commander Hale of the SS Starreach. We are here to retrieve pilot Eric Mason. Please respond." Eric looked up, then looked back at Kaari. She stood silently in the clearing. Her wings rustled in the wind. He activated. "His comes. This is Eric Mason. I'm alive." The voice on the other end responded quickly. "Thank God. We've been searching for you for weeks. Are you safe?" Eric glanced at Kari. "I'm safe," he said. "I've found someone. A protector. A friend. A home." There was a pause. "Understood. Do you need evacuation?" Eric looked at the ship again, then turned away. "No, I'm not leaving." Static filled the air for a moment. "Repeat that, pilot." He pressed the button one last time. "I've found something worth staying for." He turned off the comms. Above. The ship hovered for a minute, then slowly, it rose higher. It waited. But Eric didn't call back. And finally, it left. The sky was quiet again. Kari stepped closer. "You stay." Eric smiled. "I stay." She wrapped her wings around him. Her forehead rested against his. "You, mine," he whispered back, "and you are mine." From that day forward, they lived as one. They hunted together, built together, slept wrapped in each other's warmth. No words were needed most days. Their bond spoke louder. Eric no longer dreamed of Earth. He dreamed of wings, of sky, of the nest they shared in a world untouched by war. He learned her language, slowly. She learned his, faster. Sometimes, they sat in silence, watching the stars move across the night. One night Kari looked at him with a soft smile. "Sky ours." He nodded. Double quotes, "Yes. The sky belongs to us now." And high above the jungle, on a broken world no one claimed, a human and a beast woman built a new life. Not out of duty, but out of love.